Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Maya Alanario, and I will be your host. All lines will be in listen-only mode for the duration of the webinar, but we still want to hear from you. So please ask your questions early and often in the go-to webinar question box to your right. We'll get to as many of those as possible at the very end of the presentation today, and we will also have a survey at the very end of our webinar that we highly encourage all of you to participate in and let us know how we did. That all being said, I'll pass to Tammy for this quick slide.
Oh, just waiting for my camera to come on so you can see me. There I am. So welcome. I will cover our antitrust statement anytime SQFI or FMI gets a group of individuals together that could be competitors. We just put in this slide for a quick reminder. We're not here to talk about boycotts or dividing of market territories or anything that would violate antitrust law. And if you want a copy of this, please reach out to info@sqfi.com and we would be happy to provide you a copy.
Awesome, thank you, Tammy. We're very excited to have a discussion today on driving excellence at your SQF site, empowering people, programs, and performance. And I'm very pleased to introduce today's speakers. Renee, our SQF Practitioner of the Year, JP, SQF Auditor of the Year finalist, Laura Nelson, VP of Food Safety and Global Alliances here at Intertek Alchemy, and Tammy Van Buren, Compliance Manager at SQFI. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about them before we hop right in. JP is currently working as a food safety consultant at Intertek Alchemy, a role he's been in for the past 2.5 years. He's a seasoned SQF auditor in an FSS 22000 auditor with 10 years of auditing experience under his belt. Renee is the Food Safety and Quality Assurance Manager for Red Barn Pet Products with 7 years of food industry experience prior, and the majority of which has been in pet food and pet treats. Tammy, which you just heard from, currently oversees the management and evolution of SQFI's compliance and integrity program using data and statistics. She has more than 25 years of experience in quality control and 10 years in the food industry. Laura has over 35 years of consulting experience in food safety management, quality control programs, and learning and development optimization for processing, packaging, food service, and retail. With that, I would love to turn it over to our panelists today. We are doing it as more of a panel discussion, so Tammy will be our moderator and we'll go from there.
All right, thank you, Maya. So Renee, congratulations on being the winner of the SQF Excellence Award for Excellence in Practitioner Leadership. So big round of applause for you. Thank you so much for doing what you do every day to make food supply safer at your facility and demonstrating those leadership skills that we expect from our practitioners. So we're going to start off with a question for you. In your experience, what are the most effective ways to use your position as the practitioner as both a technical expert and a strategic leader within the organization?
So as the practitioner, I like to host a monthly SQF 101 lunch and learn for all the departments within the facility, and we cover audit highlights, emerging risks that affect our ingredients or our products. The visibility helps shift the perception from QA just being a compliance cop to being more of a coach and mentor role. And we've seen a faster cross-departmental response to corrective actions as a result from that. I also do have a seat on our monthly leadership team meetings with the corporate group, and I present them with a quarterly risk spotlight that's tied to audit findings and business KPIs. So as a result, the corrective actions are a little more integrated into operational plans, and I gain some credibility that way as a driver of both compliance and continuous improvement.
Awesome. All of those things sound like great ways to engage, the leadership. One of the things that I hate to see is where the practitioner takes a more passive role. I'm a document control person. I just manage the documents. So hearing the fact that, you're taking a very active role, a very, strong leadership role within the facility, just demonstrates again why you won that award. And so again, thank you for doing what you do. So I'm going to kind of switch gears, go to JP. Maya did mention he was the one of the finalists for our auditing excellence award, and so we do appreciate JP too. So I know him both as an auditor and as a consultant. So JP, you're in a lot of facilities. So when you're looking at various people and talking to various employees, what are some of those key skills that you look for that personnel that you think, what, they'd be a great food safety leader? So if you could just share some of those things that make people stand out.
Well, in my mind, and I apologize, I'm getting over a sickness this weekend, so I'm a little raspy. But some of the things I look for as far as skills in a facility that I might be consulting for is if you find an individual with leadership skills, and not the trained ones, but those inherent ones that people look to, that they follow, that they always ask questions. Communication, this person's going to have great communication skills or able to communicate effectively to get things done. And then the last one, and the most important, I think, coming from a quality background, is observation. That's going to be one of those things that if you find a person with those three skills, you can train them to do anything. But like always, I like to share stories. I was at a place in the U.S. and can't say where, but working with a client, and we were doing a training session. We were training all the people in the facility, and the quality practitioner, SQF practitioner, comes up and says, "I'm really struggling trying to identify someone to be my quality lead on the floor." And I was like, "Oh, that's easy. It's that person over there, the one that was asking questions in the training, the one that's out on the floor telling everyone else what to do. That's the person you want to be your quality leader." And the SQF practitioner is like, "I don't know. I don't know if they've got it right." He proceeds to tell me that this person told the owner of the business to go back off the floor and put a hairnet on. And as soon as I heard that, I was like, that's the person you want. That's the one you want out on the floor. The ones that don't mind to communicate, knowledgeable, have those inherent leadership skills, can communicate and make those observations and apply them to everyone. That's really what we're looking for, and to make sure that we're helping our clients find those people out in their workforce, to identify them, to move up and take on more responsibility.
Sounds good. Observant, communicate, not afraid to speak up. Those are all great qualities to have. And yeah, sounds like a good potential backup practitioner or, facility practitioner one of these days. So thank you for that. So we're going to switch gears a little bit. Because we're going to start talking about some code requirements. So Maya had put a slide up here. We're going to talk about, and JP, I'm going to ask you, as a consultant, what are some of those key programs that you think the SQF practitioner should focus on to help enhance their food safety systems?
Well, we all know SQF practitioners, they have their hand in everything. There's some programs they manage themselves. Let's just say like the food safety plan, the environmental program, they really manage those programs in depth. Some programs that kind of vary off the core and get shared by other departments sometimes can kind of come up, and I see where SQF practitioners could really enhance their programs is in training. Like, what's the percentage of completed training for the staff and site? When I go into a site, whether I'm auditor or consultant, If they're starting to trend that, like what's the percentage that we're getting everybody trained on all the programs, that tells me they're starting to monitor themselves, and it becomes a very organic process. And as far as complaint trends, this is another one. When they start identifying complaints is one thing, because customer service sometimes does this. And when that feedback comes back to the SQF practitioner, is there something from the complaints that can spur more training for specific events like foreign objects, seal integrity, sensory, forklift damage? Because long-term memory in a company is usually captured by training, and specific training for certain events like seal integrity. A lot of companies deal with seal integrity, whether it's the minimum seal, the pressure, the heat, whatever it is. That's usually a nice training to have because it affects so many industries across the spectrum. You can never have enough training on just how to identify seal integrity and the root causes of it. And then also, when it comes to training, tracking those contract service providers. Those guys come in once a year, twice a year. Are you making sure they get trained? And usually when you have metrics and information in there that covers this, it seems like the system's doing much better. Practitioner competency. Knowledge leads to competency, and one of the biggest things is auditors are going to start challenging the site's programs and the practitioner's knowledge. That's just going to become more inherent over the next code change, over this code edition 9. Staying up to date on relevant industry trends. For example, lead and cinnamon. Everybody knows that we've had lead and cinnamon because they've tried to increase the weight and cause some issues there. But when you hear about it, if you're a company that's got cinnamon in the plant, what have you done in your system to kind of mitigate those risks? So have you gone back and talked to the supplier, found out how they're doing their cinnamon? Do they buy it from someone else? Do they grind it themselves? What kind of testing they do? How are they verifying what that product is that you receive? Or are you just dealing with a distributor and they pass it along? A lot of times when I go in and I ask that question, a lot of them really don't know because they know of the events, but they've not applied it to their facility. And the companies that do that really step up their game to the next level. Another portion is the annual management review. And I know this comes up all the time. It's very high level in the code. It's like the third or second section. But really, annual management review is a wonderful topic to get all the senior leadership together. And if the SQF practitioner, they control the meeting, the attendees, the topics, the data, and this is the one point for the annual review that you control the narrative, you control the direction in which the company's going, and the focusing over the next year, whether it's capital improvements, facility improvements, people improvements, resources. I think this is one of those items that the practitioner can really focus on to get the biggest bang for the buck and really bring those topics to the senior level. So when they start thinking about resources, they start putting information and knowledge and a lot of, let's just say, money towards these goals. And another annual management review is cost of quality in business. I see a lot of companies when they're in that excellent range, they're identifying quality and business cost, like how much did these foreign material issues cost us, seal integrity issues cost us, and they kind of break it down and they list it out. And usually when I see an annual management review kind of listing all that information, I get super excited because I'm happy to see that stuff, because I know that they're taking their system to that next level, and it just starts kind of monitoring itself. And you can tell that the whole company and the team and the executive team and the management team at the site are really focused on driving those indicators.
Yeah, I'm so glad you included annual management review. That's one of my topics that's near and dear to my heart, and I talk about it all the time. And one of my favorite questions to ask is, well, how long is your annual management review? I mean, the SQF code doesn't say, so don't go away saying, oh, Tammy said it had to be this long. But a lot of people, when I hear them say, oh, it's 30 minutes or it's an hour, I'm like, really? Because I never had one less than 4 hours. And they're like, what? I love the thought that the practitioner is driving that. I've got your attention for 4 hours, or 8, bring in lunch, you know, um, and you can put as many topics as you want in there. The code has a minimum, but anything else that is applicable that you want your practitioner or you want your leadership to hear, throw it in the annual management review. So, because as JP said, you're the driver of that. So as practitioners, so I love that. Okay, you mentioned metrics. That's the very last word on this slide. So we're going to get into a discussion of metrics. So, we've seen some good metrics. We've seen some bad metrics, there's some of both out there. So talk to us about metrics, JP. What are some of the things that sites can do to promote continuous improvement through their metrics?
Okay, these are just some examples that kind of come to mind and over recent events that kind of pop up there, like sanitation, right? Everyone knows sanitation. But some of the metrics that a company may want to focus on is passing and failing percentages. What's passing, what's failing, first pass. These are a really nice metric to have. You can break them down over the average of like ATP results, maybe room or line. That usually helps. That may identify also rooms that constantly fail and might help drive root cause into finding out, is it the equipment? Is it the sanitation employee? Or maybe is it the person taking the swab? You just never know until you find out. And breaking it down may give you some more insight. Passing ranges. These are always some of those things like, can they be reduced? Is our top line 500 and we're normally coming in at 300? Maybe 500 is not appropriate. Maybe 500 needs to be lowered to create a new standard. And some of those things I come in and I find out that, well, at the top end's 1,000 and we're around 200. Man, that's huge. Kind of reduce it. In my mind, reduce it to a better standard and get a better range and really find out if there's any variation within that. Trending chemical usage. I'm a big fan of chemical usage, not only of the expense, but also if you don't apply the right chemical, you're not going to get the effective cleanliness. And so I'm always about, did sanitation apply enough chemical or are they applying too much chemical? That's always a big one for me because it's cost and effectiveness, very thin line there. Another item like environmental monitoring that kind of tailors in with sanitation, like zone 1, using some indicator organisms like EB, Enterobacter ACA. That's always a good indicator to find out what's there, not to implicate anything, but just to find out what's there. Is it really getting cleaned, and is it being cleaned effectively? Carts. Oh my gosh, carts. I just figured this one out just like in the last month when we were kind of developing this whole thing. Carts, they go everywhere. Maintenance carts, film carts. I see them all around. Now I check the maintenance carts. Those film carts, sometimes they'll use to bring out to load up big rolls of film on equipment. Those carts, they come from, I think, a dirty area. They go to a clean area. Probably be looking out for this one. I think these kind of be a little interesting on the results. And construction areas and new projects. We've all made it through the pandemic. Companies are now improving their facilities once again. They're bringing in contractors. They're doing all those CapEx improvements. Construction areas need to be monitored. And I think that's one thing that needs to be addressed. And you can also trend that and create that during your project, start to finish. Annual management review. You can never get enough annual management review. Some data-rich functions. Any kind of data you can put in there. Environmental health safety, accounting, finance, scheduling metrics, all of that's good. But looking past what the code requires, when I see companies really performing at a high level, I'm seeing ATP results, preventative maintenance completion ratios, HR turnover rates, R&D project launches and failures, like how many got commercialized, how many didn't. Training results, the percent completion ratio, that kind of goes back into turnover. New supplier approvals and removals. Like, are you keeping your suppliers? Are you having turnover there? Are you struggling with a few? These are all great metrics to put in the annual management review to really see how it works and how it's coming back for the site. And the last one, internal audit. we all know internal audit gets kind of pared down to just a few days, but the companies that really perform at that next level, they may include sanitation and actually send a person to watch sanitation, because that's a third of your site that may be working that you've never really, watched and observed. Weekend shifts, we all know, like, Friday night to Saturday night or Sunday night, weekend shifts can be very different. And does your internal audit cover those additional times and off times? Spread the internal audit over the year. I kind of think if you're spreading it over like every 4 months, you're getting little snapshots throughout the year, and that's better to trend and make a metric on. One of the things I was thinking about in my head is everyone breaks down internal audit in sections. But if you broke it down and turned every element into a number and created a random number generator and assigned it in pieces based on that, I think you might get some different people in different groups looking at different things individually, not as a group section. And you might find some more data and details being found in your internal audit, which will ultimately lead to a better performance of your SQF recertification or certification audit. So these are some of the things that I kind of put together, like high level, that I thought really gives the biggest bang for the buck on performance metrics for a site.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, you included annual management review, love it. Internal audit, one of my other favorite topics there. So absolutely a way to incorporate those performance metrics into a lot of different and creative ways to do things. So yeah, so whew, we've got a lot to think about already. So I'm going to throw a little bit of a twist in there, and I'm going to give you just a sneak hint. One of the new things for edition 10 is going to be change management. So I am going to ask Renee a question. So lots of changes, right, Renee? I mean, there's always something changing, okay? So what are some of the common sources of resistance you've encountered when you're rolling out something new? And what have you kind of done to make sure that you've overcome that resistance and you're able to implement that change?
I think that resistance oftentimes just comes from a fear of more paperwork or more work in general for the frontline staff, and uncertainty about what the new role is going to be. We address this by co-designing all of our new SOPs and new documents with cross-functional groups from each department. Then we pilot the changes on one shift, gather feedback from those that have to complete those tasks daily. And then once we refine the process and put it together and align those goals, the operators usually see that the positive outcome and no additional work is added to them. So that turns their skepticism into more of a buy-in. And so I think that the biggest obstacle, honestly, is aligning your goals. Everybody has the same goal at the end of the day, right? We all need to produce a safe product. We need to ship it out, and the customers need to be happy with it. So once you realize that everybody is on the same page and everybody's working towards the same goal, you can really refine those processes, like, hey, I need to update this this checklist that we're filling out every day in the plant, and I know I have to add one more thing to it, but maybe there's something that you guys are completing that doesn't need to be completed anymore, or maybe this is a checkbox sign off when really it could just be an initial that you've completed this, because now we have an SOP or a procedure that hits all of those points. Therefore, we can now reduce that documentation a little bit and make it even easier than what you were doing to begin with. And I think just shifting that that mindset into a little bit more collaborative and aligning those goals really makes a difference in getting people on your team.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the tools that I teach a lot of times is called a force field analysis. And so that's essentially what you've done here, Renee. You have decided, here's my challenges, here's my forces against change, and here's what I'm going to do to address those before I can make that change successful. So, you know, I don't know if you knew that it had a name, but that's essentially what you've done here. For those that are wanting to know more, force field analysis, Google it.
I'll have
it's
to
a
write
great
that
tool.
down for myself.
Yeah. So, you know, making sure we understand what those challenges are and address them, because so many times we just want to, you know, keep our blinders on and think that it will go away. And a lot of times they won't go away. So tell me, Renee, what's one of the favorite things that you've implemented? You know, give me an example of something new or changing that you've done that you're kind of proud of and you'd like to share.
Well, one of our biggest projects was actually rolling out a tablet-based inspection program for the quality assurance department. So we were able to take probably a dozen paper checklists that were being completed daily and put those into a web-based app. That also allowed me to reevaluate those documents at that time, update them, capture any other metrics that maybe weren't being captured well before, and then also make it bilingual to help some of our staff that maybe have a little harder time understanding written English. Then we put together one person that's great with technology with each individual and let them kind of train one-on-one and get comfortable doing those checks within the tablet. And once they saw that they could just click through everything, they didn't have to spend 30 minutes printing all their documentation in the morning or completing a new document when they made errors. It really turned around our completion time. So within just a few weeks, we had our data entry errors fell really drastically, and report time turned around from days, sometimes weeks, into just hours, because there also has to be somebody on the backside inputting all that data to make it usable. So now I can just export that data directly out of the tablets almost in real time as they're completing those checks, and it makes it a lot more efficient for us to handle problems as they come.
That's awesome. And I don't know if you all picked up on it, but there were a couple things in there that I could have, you know, tagged onto for metrics. You know, Renee talked about error percentages being down. She talked about turnaround time, completion time on the paperwork. You know, you never know where you're going to find some of those performance metric opportunities. So, you know, keep that in mind. It's not always this big metric that, you know, the plant manager has to come up with. It's, you know, it's those little things that, you know, can make a big difference. So just keep that in mind. So, all right. So Laura has been patiently quiet, letting us chat. We're going to bring her into the conversation. So, you know, what are some of the things, some suggestions you have for empowering employees to make sure that they're in line with the practitioner and helping that practitioner ensure program compliance? And I know you have some statistics for us.
I do, Tammy, thank you. And gosh, I just want to call out Renee for having those lunch and learns. I think that's a great way to empower the teams, right? SQF is, you know, the certification is not a mystery, and everybody has an important role, critical, I would say, role. Each and every employee. I think sometimes our practitioners just take it all on themselves to drive forward and be responsible for, and the people that are truly empowering their employees, kind of building that food safety army out there. So training them on the hazards and the risk and their role in following our procedures and in protocols and why they're doing it, I think is so important. In fact, our global training survey indicated several key things that companies can do to really empower those employees. One of the things, we really want motivated employees because they follow our procedures. The data is very clear on that. And from our global training survey, we found out that those that have more motivated employees have a strong training reinforcement program. So this goes back to my for those of you that know me in past webinars, my rolling thunder on food safety, I really think you have to keep food safety top of mind so that it doesn't get drowned out by, operations and production and, those kind of focus. That's clear that we do that, but where does food safety, sit? And enforcing training. So people do, pre-shift huddles. They'll do posters. They'll do town hall reminders. There's screens that are going on talking about food safety. Lots and lots of ways to reinforce training. And those companies that are doing that, as you can see some of the data here, 83% more motivated employees following procedures. And that's really what we're after. Another thing, professional development. Our employees really like to have more and more training. They like to, I see everybody nodding, having the ability to shift and maybe learn new equipment, do different things, new skills, become that backup practitioner, volunteer for that. That's fantastic, right? So companies that are doing a really good job at professional development, going beyond the must-have training, seeing 47% more motivated employees. And that's self-reported, right? And then cross-functional learning management teams. I think that is so important to not fight with our workplace safety folks, for time, or, the program of the month, sustainability or lean or whatever it is, and trying to fight for that employee time for food safety training. But working together to say, hey, here's what we've identified. I love JP's, we've identified seal integrity issues. And so let's just develop some training, and collectively that cross-functional team will understand the importance of that and the importance of carving out that time. So those are just a couple of things. Cross-functional teams, coaching, lots and lots of value, having that supervisor reinforce the learnings, and not just the learnings. We talked about competency, but the behaviors out there on the plant floor, moving from classroom training to actual reinforcement of those behaviors is so important. And when you do that, when you give that great feedback, those employees feel good about what they're doing. They're more motivated to do the right things. So, yeah.
So we've provided the required training for our employees, but how do I really make improvements? Food safety culture is the big word. That's going to be even a bigger word for edition 10. So how do we move from that training to we've trained people, but now I really need to show that we've got a good food safety culture going on?
Yep. One of my passions, as most people know, food safety culture. So yeah, great question. And it does go beyond, Timmy, you're spot on, beyond the classroom training. It's got to be an immersion of what, the beliefs of that plant and those individuals to support food safety. I think, so I'm borrowing from Dr. Jesperson, one of the leading authorities on food safety culture, but we've talked about, some of the tools to use. And one of the things we like to talk about is those senior leaders. We've talked a lot about senior management and getting that support. Keep me honest, Tammy, but 2.1.1.2 is that culture where you have to, the senior management isn't leading and supporting food safety culture. Well, they can't lead and they can't support if they don't understand it. And so first thing is challenge yourself. Do you have your top 10 senior leaders? Do they understand the business around food safety risk? Do they understand the criticality of that and what their role in the analysis of these? So I think we can pause there and just say, well, sure, operations may know, but what about VP of finance? When you send a request to get drains repaired or coving on the walls repaired or whatever, do they understand how important that is and what the risk could be by not signing off on that requisite? And so HR, clearly training is key. So making sure that those senior leaders have that knowledge, that's key. Also, again, practitioner can't drive it all. Having that guiding coalition of people that will help you drive food safety culture. We're all, many of us have those assessments that are done. We have to look at it. Where in the organization do we need improvements? Is it people, adaptability, wherever, consistency? And so once we understand that, we're going to put some programs together, but you have to have a coalition of people supporting those programs and helping to execute those, monitor those, assess the effectiveness of those. And so super, super important to have a big champions of food safety culture way beyond just the practitioner. And then finally, communication, so important to talk about food safety and have a cadence of that. Town halls, break rooms, new messages, those, wherever those communications are, that's so important. And recognition programs. And we talked about reinforcement for employees. There's nothing better than having recognition programs around food safety. Those people that you've authorized to see something, say something, right, and escalate it. Let's recognize those people, and that will send a message and help that culture of saying, hey, this is well received. You don't get slapped if you stop the line or if you have a question on a batch or whatever. In fact, you get celebrated, right? And if you can have that shift and do those recognitions, that is super, super important to grow that culture.
Yeah, and recognition is cheap. I mean, it doesn't, involve a lot of money, just, calling out somebody's name. Those that have heard me talk before, I used to watch the video camera at the hand wash station, and I would, record what percentage of employees washed their hands correctly on each shift. And then at our quarterly site meeting, I would share the percentages. And so, people were excited to be recognized for 98%, hand wash, correctness. And, they would always ask me, how are we doing? Have you watched yet this quarter? Did we beat second shift this time? So people love to be recognized as, doing a good job. And so, again, recognition is so cheap, but yeah, I love it. Food safety culture, again, and you were spot on. It is 2112, Laura. I'm impressed. You got the code reference, and there's going to be some updates for edition 10. So we're going to dig deeper into food safety culture. So might as well get it right for edition 9, so that as you go into edition 10. So, but okay, so we've done everything. We've trained people. We've tried to lead this good food safety culture. However, I still have an employee or employees that are just not following our food safety requirements. So what can I do? And Laura, I think you've got some suggestions for us. So what can we do to get them on board?
Oh gosh. Yeah, doesn't it just want to make you pull your hair out, these rogue employees where I in my audit days, I can remember somebody not doing something. They're like, I just trained them on that. I don't know why they're not following, Laura, right? Well, there's really always a reason. The first thing to know is you're not alone.
True.
On our global training survey, 73%, this is our highest number in 8 years. It's going in the wrong direction, to be honest. They admit, despite all our training efforts, right, we still have employees not doing what they are supposed to be doing on the plant floor. So when we look at some of the reasons why, I think some of the reasons include we're really leaning into that required training, classroom training, and then it's a walk away, right? And then it's a puzzler why JP gets on the line and Renee goes, hey, you know what, JP, when we get in a hurry, you don't have to do all that paperwork immediately. Just wait till the end and turn it in. It's fine, right? Those bad habits start to creep up. And I think, so verifying and doing that training reinforcement really teases out those behaviors and those bad habits. Number one reason why people are not following is bad habits. That's what's identified as the cause. And people, those fellow colleagues, are where those bad habits bubble up. And so, especially in change, people revert back to the old forms or, all kinds of things. And so validating behaviors, I think, is a real key. And that's super important to know that, you've got to be in the moment oftentimes to see them doing those shortcuts. And so, I loved your example, Tammy, of the hand wash, because I think when you start calling it out and maybe even a supervisor saying, hey, you're not supposed to do this, and that data gets sort of bubbled up, all of a sudden you start getting peer-to-peer, hey, you're not doing it right. And they're course correcting their own colleagues in the right direction versus sharing those bad habits. So that training and reinforcement, you can see here again from the global training survey, those people that said we have a strong training reinforcement program. Remember, we talked about, that could be anywhere from a combination of posters to pre-shift. Let's focus on this, folks. We've got to get this right, to coaching, lots and lots of ways to reinforce our policies and procedures. And those people that self-identify as having a strong program have less non-compliance, right? And so I think this is the one area that is super important, because it's my belief that some of these not following our procedures introduces some hazards or potential risk. And when you have that exposure and you're not focused on it, you start to have people sliding, and those bad habits just get multiplied versus, more of the here's the proper behaviors and reinforcing those. So yeah, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. I don't know, Renee, if you've got any secret sauce in your area or not.
Suggestions? I was going to ask, does anybody have any suggestions for the group? How do you, because that seems to be a common problem. I think Laura said it, it's not, you're not alone. Everybody runs into that, where you have that one person that, doesn't want to follow, the GMP requirement or a procedure. For me, it was always beard nets. Guys did not want to wear beard nets, and that used to drive me absolutely insane. And so, understanding why, and then sometimes at the end of the day, last ditch, it was, a reinforcement in my office where I said, life is all about choices. You can choose to follow the rules and wear a beard net, or you can choose to work somewhere else. It's as simple as that, because
One of the
sometimes it is.
one of the things I come across with the employees, right? The majority follow the rules. Sometimes you get those outliers, and there are a few of the outliers that just don't want to do it. And you get the Tammy scenario. Some of the other ones that I've found, when you start to actually go and talk to the people and ask questions like, hey, we came out with a new training, are you following the new training? What's going on? Ask them about the situation, their condition, the environment, situations. You will probably find out the reason, and they will communicate it to you one way or another, why they're not doing it. It could be maybe the policy needs to be updated, or the SOP. Maybe there's a situation that they can't follow because it happens on the line once a month. I always like to go out and talk to the employees and just get their idea. And usually I can find out what's going on and get their buy-in just with a conversation. And I don't have to spend like every minute with them, but like 2-3 times a week. I go out, what's going on? Have you seen that again? Deep down, I think it's they want to be involved and they want to know more about it. And maybe they weren't too convinced that it was going to work. But once you start having that just conversation and that involvement, that turns the wheel and they jump on board and they might become your best advocate for that change. Some changes I've been able to get done in like 2 or 3 days. Other changes have taken a year because it affects so much and it had to be planned out. So yeah, I usually find those employees, they are out there, but majority of them, I think just having the conversation, involving them more, having their input, like, hey, can you review this and let me know what you think, what needs to be changed, usually gets their buy-in. And once they get the buy-in, that employee, that staff member will make the change. And because everyone wants to make a food safe product, inherently everybody does.
Yeah, no, Renee?
I think you have to know your site, right? And so this is where your practitioners are super important, because I can tell you that we in the Midwest are very competitive people. And so one of my favorite things is, you hear me beat the drum of cross-functional teams a lot. And so we have a lot of meetings where we have the group together. And so one example is a plant-wide, we have a supervisor meeting every Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so this is somewhere that I like to bring certain things that have really been a struggle within the department, such as following basic GMPs. Beard nets drives me crazy also. I don't know why it's a fashion show here. It's just a thing. So we started having each of the QAs do a regular GMP check in whichever department that they're working in. And before, that was something that was just kind of taking place. It was meeting a requirement. It was, meeting the need of what we needed for SQF. And it came to a point, driving forward, is how can I use this data to improve some of these issues that we're seeing. So I started taking this data that my QAs were collecting and compiling it into a weekly and then monthly and then month over month, year over year report, just to kind of align it with, employee turnover and things like that. Because we all know it takes a little time when you have a higher employee turnover rate to get those metrics to kind of level back out. But I started taking those GMP reports, breaking it out by department, and then coming to my supervisor meetings on Tuesdays and Thursdays and just praising whatever department was doing the best. And it wasn't focusing on the bad side. It wasn't calling anybody out, but everybody got the same paper, right? And then I'm saying, hey, this department, way to go. You guys had no issues this entire week. That's so awesome. Thank you guys. And then I found that the supervisors amongst themselves want to be competitive, right? So they want to be the one that has the best GMP score for the week. And so I think that's where, if you're spending a lot of time with those leaders in those different departments and you kind of can figure out what motivates them, you can kind of use that to your advantage as well. I didn't have to incentivize it. We didn't have to put any money behind it. It was as simple as making it a competitive game.
I love it. And several of the things that you said, Renee, really drives home some of the things that we say as well. I love the fact that you said, as the practitioner, you have to know your site. That's one of the most hotly debated topics that we have is, can a practitioner be located halfway across the country? And we always emphasize no. And so that's why Renee is our, practitioner of the year, our leadership, practitioner leadership excellence award winner, because she gets it. She gets the essence of what a practitioner is, what they do, how they lead that food safety culture. I love the fact that you focus on the positives, not the negatives all the time, because, you have to find what drives different people. Just like, Laura talked a lot about training, devising this methodology that reaches all people. So some are visual learners, some, like to, be in a group, some like to be by themselves when they're learning. So finding that right fit for your people. And as a practitioner, that's that's what you're there for, I think. So great discussions today. I think we have a little bit of time left for some questions from the audience, but we also have some available resources real quick. I think Laura is going to cover off, and then we'll finish out with any questions.
Yeah, just thanks, Tammy. Yeah, fantastic discussions. Real quick, a lot of you know us through our training, but we have an amazing consulting group. JP is illustrative of that, I think. We help people with anything from training to gap assessments to helping you develop programs. We can help you conduct internal audits. So all kinds of specific SQF consulting support. So if you find yourself kind of struggling in a couple areas, just let us know and we can have a little discussion with you. Our renowned training that we offer, we do offer training courses. As Tammy said, it's multi-language. The kinesthetic learners, the verbal learners, auditory, everybody, we have different methods for training. We have a patented remediation loop that really maximizes the time that people spend in that training to get that compliance and that level of knowledge exchange. It's very flexible, multi-language, again, very important in today's organizations that have so many different employees and languages spoken. Some of the training topics are there, including an introduction to food safety standards for SQF. Again, trying to get all of those people sort of familiarized with SQF and hazards and environmental and all of the things, right? So it's so important to get those employees aware of food safety. A lot of them, we hire them, they just have no experience whatsoever, right, with concept of food safety. So it's super important, the work that all of you are doing, and please let us know if we can help automate that process for you and do away with those sign-in sheets, totally digitize your training. So yeah, back over to Tammy and Maya for questions.
Absolutely. Thank you, Laura, for that quick overview of the available resources for today. As I said in the beginning of this presentation, we highly encourage you to fill out our survey as soon as you hop off. We're happy to help you with any of the things that we touched on today and just driving that excellence at your SQF site. And we're going to take a few questions from the audience. We have about 8 minutes left. So if you'd like, you can type in any questions that you didn't get to ask throughout the presentation. And just as a reminder, you'll also receive a copy of this presentation and a live recording of the webinar. So you can go back and reference this at a later time as well. Ooh, we have a ton of questions. So we'll try to get to as many as possible. Thank you, everybody, again. This first one is for Renee. Renee, did you have an outside company set up your tablet program for QC?
Yes, we did. I put together all of the documentation that I wanted, and then we used our ERP system that we're already using. That way it can kind of cross mingle. That way I can go in and I can see everything from the inventory side and then also see the quality metrics within it at the same time.
Awesome. Another question coming in. This audience member said, this group probably already talked about this, but I wanted to ask because I didn't hear, how do you recommend we approach tracking or measuring our food safety culture?
Yeah.
Anyone want to take that one?
I can talk about that.
Go ahead.
Every company's different. Food safety culture is really your best measurement for how people react to situations, I think, as far as the plant goes. Sometimes companies do surveys. They ask a bunch of questions about, what would you do? What do you think? How the operation goes? I think surveys work. Other companies kind of trend and do analysis on their individual programs where they have staff involvement and comments, like they may do a comment box or track and trend where employees or staff have the availability to submit comments. They will track and trend those inputs within the system. Like one of the inputs would be like pest control. Have you seen any kind of pest activity in the site? That's usually one that I've seen companies kind of trend. Also the comment box. These are probably the most common ways I've seen trending the food safety culture, and from what I've seen in my travels. So
Yeah.
I would just add a different perspective on surveys. I'm not a huge fan of a food safety culture survey. And just to let me explain why, because a lot of times they don't get used correctly. So, you know, the idea behind us, and it's not just a food safety culture survey, but surveys in general. So you're asking people to give you an opinion on something, and based on how happy they are today or how mad they are today or something that recently happened to them could influence those survey results. So I'm mad today, so everything's bad, even though that's not really true. So for me, I lean less on somebody doing a survey and more on what is food safety culture? Is people doing the right things? So identifying those metrics where you can measure that people are doing the right things, without relying on them to say, yep, I did the right thing today, or I always do the right thing. So for me, surveys are a little less important than just truly finding those good metrics, and it could be something as simple as error percentage on their QA paperwork Renee mentioned, or, hand washing percentage. It's doing those things the right way and implementing the food safety system. So for me, I take a little bit different perspective on food safety culture surveys.
I'm going to just add to both of those perspectives. Obviously, there's no right or wrong. I love the point of knowing your plant and what you're trying to accomplish with that. So I would say too, there are a number of consultants out there that can help you with food safety culture. And Tammy, to your point, I think Maya, I just wrote a blog on this on action plans for food safety culture, but getting the right data, the right picture of your plant, whether you can do that internally or if you might need some external help. What we have found is that there is a disconnect oftentimes with what leadership thinks they're doing, and they think they're doing great, and it's all cascading down and it's working fantabulous at the frontline side. And guess what? When you ask the frontline, they're like, no way, that none of that's happening, right? Or they're, my supervisor isn't following things and what have you. So a lot of times it's interviews at different levels of the organization. You're really trying to paint the picture of, and data is certainly a part of that, is, where are those areas that you can concentrate on? And, it includes management support, it includes, communication of food safety, it includes, are you leveraging recognition programs? What levers are you pulling, and what results are you getting out of that? And if it's not delivering, then, if you need new levers, new tools, then, seek out, there's all kinds of research now that's available out there. There's consultants, training tools, all kinds of things to help you identify some of those areas that you, based on your data, based on your organization, to deploy and make improvements. So you're not alone on trying to address, and Tammy gave you a hint on food safety culture changes coming up. It's a good topic to focus on now. Yeah, agree on that.
Definitely. Well, that wraps up our webinar today. Thank you so much to our audience for joining us. We hope to see you on another Intertek Alchemy webinar sometime soon. And thank you so much to our wonderful panelists today for providing their diverse perspectives and really bringing a lot of value to the conversation. And thank you, Tammy, for being our moderator today. We really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.